Victor, we're now at the
Yeah.
end of the first quarter. If we reflect on the first quarter after COVID has been lifted, the COVID restrictions lifted in China, how much of a recovery have we seen so far in Q1?
Yes, hello. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Victor.
Yeah, and we are seeing modest recovery, I would say, and we can say from Sinopec's annual report for 2022, which was released yesterday, and we can see the giant's forecast for oil demand in 2023. It expects to raise its output, its growth throughput by 3.2% this year, and its oil product output by 7.7. I mean, gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel by 7.7% this year. So the oil giant also expects domestic demand to grow by over 7% for the whole year. And we can base on this and make some judgments. And for the first quarter, it recovered quite fast in January, and then in the first half of February, because of much more travel during the Chinese New Year. We had the peak travel rush for the Spring Festival. But in the second half of February, gasoline demand and jet fuel demand shrank a little bit because of less travel. But then it recovered slightly again in late March as travel is now coming back again. But for diesel, demand is picking up, has been picking up since, say, February, but not very fast, just modestly. And well, if you are looking at crude oil imports, we saw that from GACC data, imports in January and February declined. But actually, it was probably because of the delay unloading and customs declaration of quite a few cargoes in the first 2 months. And we might see a jump in March imports indicated by the customs data. Yeah.
The recovery in domestic travel, we have not yet seen the opening, although there's been some signals of opening to foreign travel, foreign visas for tourist visas and such things. Should we expect that this will give a big lift to aviation fuel demand in China in the second quarter?
Yes, and as for international flights, it has not recovered to, say, about 60% of the pre-pandemic level yet. So we expect it to grow to about 70 to 80% of the pre-pandemic level in a couple of months. And the country is now trying to speed up this process and make easier for more people to come to China. As we had a discussion with Vandana earlier, she said that her friend told her that a lot of people were waiting for visas to come to China. So this is it's kind of common now. We're expecting more travelers into China in the near term.
I wanted to get your opinion on the comments published today out of China by the Premier Li Qiang, who told foreign business executives, including the head of Apple, Tim Cook, that the country will open up further. Coming out of COVID, there was concerns, and there still is significant concerns about, as they say, having all your eggs in one basket, i.e. that you have all your manufacturing in China. Like, for example, Apple moved a significant, or is looking to move a significant amount of production of iPhones to India. Other manufacturers are looking to diversify their exposure to China. We also had the sort of what seemed to be a restriction on technology companies in China, and the most famous CEO, Jack Ma, returning to China, it would appear yesterday for the first time in many months. Perhaps you can tell us, or from your opinion, what does this all mean? What are the signals that should be read in these developments?
Well, when China said China would open up further, it means, well, it's trying to create a better environment for foreign companies too, as well as domestic private companies, trying to create a level playing field for all the companies playing in this market and provide foreign companies with more, well, facilities, more convenience to enable them to do better in the Chinese market. And as you said, some companies are actually moving away from China, but some are moving into China too. And some are moving away from China in the past 3 years because of the COVID restrictions and because of the cost. They are finding a place with lower cost, but some other cannot move away from China. Most of them cannot move away from China just for the cost, no. And for some companies, well, because of the US, they require some companies not to do business with China-based companies. So some of them had to move away from China because of this decoupling of the USA. And there is this reason too. And for the Chinese government is trying to make it more attractive for all the companies, not just foreign companies, but also domestic private companies, including small and micro companies. Say yesterday, the government announced a plan for tax cuts, which will amount to 480 billion yuan. That's about
That, did you say tax cuts?
Yes, for
Tax
small,
cuts.
yes, for not just small and micro private companies, and also in some other sectors such as R&D researches or R&D and high-tech manufacturing and some other sectors too. That's about 70 billion US dollars per year. And it's trying to make it easier for small private companies to get along this year because they're still facing quite a lot of difficulties. Yes.
Victor, I wanted to get your insights on firstly the two things. One being the visit of President Xi to Russia last week. Obviously, got a lot of international coverage. In China, how was it seen? Was this a visit about energy supply? Was it a visit about China being a global peacemaker? How was it communicated in China? How was it seen from your perspective, the visit to Russia?
Well, the visit to Russia, well, to many Chinese was just basically an average one, I would say. And it's of course for deeper cooperation to strengthen the cooperation between Russia and China. It could be also for the energy cooperation. And of course, China has been trying to, negotiate, make the two countries reach a peace deal, Russia and Ukraine. That would benefit the whole world, not just, Russia and Ukraine. And it has been trying to do that.
But from China's point of view, I mean, just from a perspective, there's no doubt, of course, peace in Ukraine would be a big deal. But I'm just saying, in terms of in China, in the newspapers, in the coverage of this visit to Russia, was it a story about trade and more new energy supply, or was it a story about global peacemaking?
Well, there is no specific tone about this travel to Russia, for most Chinese people. And if we look at the official reports, it's about, for deeper cooperation, it's not specifically for energy. It's just kind of, friendly visit to Russia for broader cooperation. So it's kind of regular visits. I mean, for most.
And
Chinese
are
people.
we seeing? I mean, we're seeing. Obviously, we were talking earlier about India's oil imports of Russian crude growing and sustaining. And is China the same? What's the outlook for China's imports of Russian crude oil? How was it in Q1? What does it look like for Q2?
Well, in the first 2 months, crude from Russia accounted for about 80.7%. That's a record high, I would say.
80?
No, I mean accounted for 18.7%.
18,
18.7, almost
uh,
19%.
of total
And
imports.
yeah, and that's quite that's quite high, and it overtook Saudi Arabia again in the first 2 months. And if we still have the discounts on Russian crude, we can see still quite large imports from Russia, and the share for Russian crude will stay quite high, may come close to 20%. Yes.